Hi! May is over. I'm gonna talk about the books that I read in May. I'm a bit worried that this video is gonna get like interrupted many times because first of all it's raining. When the weather is like that, my baby tends to get a little bit more fussy. So my baby is actually like right here, right next to me, because they still get a little bit worried when I'm not in the same room as them. And also like the rain is like beating against my window. It's really loud, so I'm kind of hoping that the mic doesn't pick up too much of the rain sounds. I have no idea how to edit it out, so so loud. Actually, I think I'll just talk about the first 3 books I read. So it's the Locked Tomb series. Some people call it a tetralogy because it's 4 books. So this is book 1, Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn. I received this as a gift many years ago. I read it then, and then I promptly forgot everything I read, and then I decided that I wanted to reread it now that the second book and the third books were also out, and the 4th book is expected to be out this year in October. So I was like, this is a perfect time, because when I first read it, book 2 wasn't out yet. The description over here says lesbian necromancers explore a haunted gothic palace in space. That is about right. Yeah, that about sums it up. This is a SF fantasy, I wouldn't call it YA series. The characters in this book, I feel like none of them are straight. So hey, happy Pride Month, it's June now, happy Pride, yeah. The issue is not their sexuality, because their sexuality is just a teeny tiny part of their characters, and the characters are just so well written, the stories are just so well written that I could not put this book down. The moment I started it, I was hooked from the very start. In a way, like the first book, it kind of has a little bit of a locked room element to it, in that you have a bunch of people who don't necessarily like each other and know each other, and then they are locked in a place with a secret to unlock of some sort. Whoever gets to get to it first will win first. It's like a race to a secret that will unlock great power for these people. And then one day, people start dying. They start dying like one by one. They start dropping dead like flies. The remainder of the people inside this sort of locked room, which is actually like a crumbling haunted gothic palace as stated in the front, they start to suspect each other. They start to try to figure out what is happening. Could a ghost be killing them? But then again, if it's a ghost, how can it be killing them? Is there actually like a monster in the basement that's killing people one by one? I really do not want to spoil it for you, because I feel like this reading experience is something that you need to get into yourself. There are some tropes that I can talk about, the common knowledge. One of them is the enemies to lovers. So from the very start, you have Gideon and harrow from what we are told is the 9th house, which is like a planet that basically, it sounds like Pluto until you find out it is Pluto. It is very, very cold. It's very dark, very little sunlight. The people over there are kind of like shadow cultists, but that's not a very nice term to use, because instead of worshipping their god, who is the undying emperor, they worship this tomb that they house on their planet. And this tomb is supposed to contain don't know what, you will find out, but they kind of like worship it. They have turned their guardianship of the tomb into a religion in and of itself. The other houses don't really look very kindly on them because they have a very wacky religious rituals. So it's very, very reminiscent of Catholic Mass. In fact, it's also called Mass. They will gather for prayers many times throughout the day. All the people who are in this planet are called like nuns. The ruling family, they are called the Reverend Mother, Reverend Father, and Reverend Daughter, and they are sort of like the religious leaders of this planet. Our main characters come from this place, and then when they go to another place to discover the secret to unlimited power, you get to meet other people from the other houses, which are other planets, and they have a very different focuses. The thing about this world is that necromancy is a thing. Like, people can raise the dead. I don't really want to say raise the dead because it makes it sound like you resurrected them, but it's more of like the so-called science behind it is that when a person dies, they release this thing called thanagy, like thanatos, whereas when they are alive, they have this sort of energy called thalargy. So when they die, thalargy changes into thanergy, and necromancers are able to harness that thanergy to do things that will be considered miracles, such as raising corpses, manipulating dead bones, calling back spirits from the depths of the spirit realm. Okay, I don't know why my camera insists on focusing on my cat right now, but like, you know what, just enjoy, it's fine. So that's the book 1. It gives you the premise. It's told from the perspective of this character called Gideon. And Gideon herself is a mystery. She wasn't born in the 9th house. She appeared there one day with her mother who died along the way. She was raised in the 9th house. She kind of hates it. Remember the enemies to lovers thing that I mentioned? She has this love-hate relationship with the only other person who is her age in the area, who is the reverend daughter, which is kind of like the princess of the 9th house, called harrow. A small spoiler, at the end of the first book, you think that Gideon has died. Yeah, this is necessary to tell you because I'm going to talk about the second book now. So the second book, over here, Harrow the Ninth. It's told from the perspective of Harrow, but at the same time, not really. It is told in second person narrative. It almost seems as if there is somebody standing right next to Harrow, narrating her story to her, saying, you do this, you do that. At first I was like thinking, why this choice of narration? But then later on I realized that it's actually very deliberate. It was meant to show that Harrow's own mind was at that moment fractured. Harrow at that point in time was not entirely herself. In Harrow the Ninth, she's suffering from some memory issues. It appears as if she does not remember the character Gideon in the first place, and there is some sort of like fill-in, and she sort of like has rewritten history or like rewritten her own memories of the events that happened in the first book in order to deal with what is clearly grief from losing Gideon. In the second book, it's also mostly set on the spaceship. We get to find out a lot more about the character who goes by God. God clearly does not seem to be a very godlike person. We get to unlock a little bit of his lore. Who is God? What is he like? Who are his saints? Towards the end, Harrow regains her memories. She remembers who Gideon is, and that's when like the pieces start to fall into place. What I like about this series, especially in books 1 and 2, is that it is just secret after secret being revealed, and then it makes you like see, oh my god, actually the lore of this series is so intricate. It's so like well planned. Like even from the very first book, there is already so much foreshadowing that you don't really understand until you reread it, and then you are like, oh, this is why it was like that. I get it now because now I read the second book, now I read the third book, and then when you go back and you think about the first book, you're like, it makes sense now, it makes sense. Yeah. Oh, thunder. Okay, so book 3, Nona the Ninth. This is set after the events of the second book, where Harrow is mentally not around, but her physical body is still around, and her physical body is being taken care of on some random planet somewhere because she does not seem to be who she is anymore. They gave her a different name, Nona. Nona is a creature or a soul that does not seem to have much experience living, in the sense that Nona had to go and relearn everything. She had to relearn how to eat, how to bathe, language. She doesn't know how to read or write, even though she's in Harrow's 19-year-old body. So even though she doesn't know quite a lot of like basic human existence things, there are things that she does know. She can read people's emotions. She can tell what people secretly are thinking. However, for Nona, because she's mentally in elementary school, all she can, yes baby, yes, hello, what's wrong? It's alright. Okay. So all Nona wants to do is just hang out with her friends. She managed to get into a clique of friends who are just a bunch of kids actually. Ayo, baby! And she just wants to go to school, hang out with her friends, go on adventures with them, enjoy being part of like the inner circle. That's all she wants. So she is very childlike in her mentality. She has also no ability to do any necromancy or any like sword play. So she's being taken care of by Camilla and Palamedes. They are trying to figure out who exactly is inhabiting Harrow's body right now. Is it Harrow's soul, or is it Gideon's soul, or is it like a third person's soul? Ayo, baby. Come here. Ayo. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay, baby. It's alright. Oh, my hair. Maybe I should just continue like this. After a while, you start to figure out exactly who Nona is, which then gives you the lead up to the 4th book. Book Electo the Ninth is coming out soon. Very excited for it. Another thing about Nona the Ninth is that the chapters are interspersed between the present, where Nona is trying to get to her 6-month birthday, and also flashbacks to a past where God narrates his life story. And you get to find out more about how did this 9-house system even came to be, how did this guy even become God, and also why is it that necromancy is the thing. You get the full lore of it. from the third book. The third book also is kind of like built up to the big showdown that you know is going to happen in the fourth book, which is very exciting. To my surprise was when I finished like reading the 3 books one after the other. I wanted to read more, had nothing else to read, so I went online and then I started like reading the wiki page for the Locked Tomb series, and I also started like reading like Tumblr posts, and there's like so much like fandom discourse around this series, and there's also a lot of fan art around it. It's very exciting to be part of the fandom because it's such a well-written series. I would say that this is like a really good piece of escapist fantasy. It's just so possible to ship so many of the different characters. Can I put you down? Can or not? Let go of my hair? Thank you. You want it? Go on. You want to sleep? Alright, go and sleep. Okay, book 4, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So this book is the prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. I gotta be honest with you, I read very long ago, many years ago, when it was at the peak of its popularity, I would say. I've also watched all the movies when they came out. It was a very good time to be alive. I felt like that the movies did quite a very good job of representing the events of the book. And it's also one of those dystopian YA series that actually had a very good message at its core. Like, it wasn't just hopping onto the trend, you know, it was actually trying to say something. It was actually trying to critique, comment on actual societal issues that were happening. When I heard about the prequel, I put in my vote for it, and then there was like, I waited so long because there were so many people like queuing for this prequel. I didn't really know why until I googled it. Then I realized that there's like a movie coming out at the end of the year or like next year, which is why like the book is suddenly so popular. I saw a bit of the trailer for the movie to come, which got me like quite excited. I think like when the movie comes out, I would really want to go and watch it. On your binky? Go on? Go on? Okay. Go on, binky. In this book, the character focus is Snow, who we know in the original trilogy is kind of like the big bad guy, President Snow. He seems to be responsible for many of the problems and the pains and the sufferings of the people across the different districts. But over here, in the prequel, Snow is just an 18-year-old. He's also having problems of his own, so he starts out as kind of like a sympathetic character. You're like, actually this guy quite poor thing. Because of the war, his family has no money, he's an orphan, still has to keep up appearances because there's a lot of pressure on him to preserve the family name. He's basically starving, he has no food to eat, he's like surviving on cabbage soup. His cousin is slaving away. The cousin's employer doesn't exactly treat her well either. So these are like sympathetic characters at the very start, right? We are meant to feel a bit sorry for them, we're meant to sort of root for them a little bit. Snow is about to join a mentorship program for the 10th Hunger Games. So it's been 10 years since establishment of this very creative and unusual form of punishment for the rebels. He's been assigned the girl tribute from District 12. Her name is Lucy Gray. Even though like Snow, he is someone that we can feel a bit sorry for, he also reviews himself to be a little bit of a jerk. Like, he has these beliefs, kind of like elitist, also a little bit snobbish. I think what this author does a very good job of is creating a character who you know for sure is going to be the biggest villain in the universe, but at the same time you kind of like understand why he became the way he did. The thing about suffering is that you can suffer and then you can become a better person for it, or you can suffer and then you can turn into like a villain. Usually we are very used to characters who are like goody, so they suffer, but then they are good people in the end. They decide to show empathy for other people, they decide to help end the suffering of other people. These are like the characters that we are used to. But Snow, on the other hand, he does the opposite thing. He suffers and then he somehow manages to use that as justification for all the crap that he's doing onto other people. I think that this is a very realistic portrayal of a person, because there are people who are like that, you know, like suffering doesn't make them better people, poverty doesn't make them better people. In fact, the moment they have the chance to rise above their station, even if it means killing people or like throwing others under the bus, they seize it. Snow is a character like that. The romance between Snow and Lucy Gray is a little bit like a red herring. Like, you're meant to be very invested in their relationship, right? Like, it's clear that they have sort of fallen for each other, even though there is still a little like undercurrent of mistrust, because naturally they are from two different parts of the country, they have very different upbringings, they have very different value systems and beliefs to begin with, but they are also bonded together because of their experience in the Hunger Games, and they were allies at one point in time, but deep down, you can kind of see that Snow looks down on Lucy Gray. He is willing to be with her only because he has somehow managed to gaslight himself into thinking that she is not all the things that he despises. So this romance between them, it seems like the main focus of the book, but it actually is not. It's more of like a vehicle for showing how Snow thinks and how very quickly he can pivot from altruism to complete self-centeredness. As a villain origin story, I enjoyed it. I think it's very clever. Okay, my baby is calm. You calm? Alright, next book. This is How You Lose the Time War by Amal, el-mohtar and Max Gladstone. So this is a co-written novel. It's pretty short. I gotta be honest with you, I picked it up only because I saw it on Twitter. It was like being promoted by this account called Bigolus Dickolus Wolfwood, and this account was actually like a Trigun fan account. Trigun is a very old manga, and the anime is like getting a reboot, I think. This account, for some reason, tweeted about this book. For some reason, the algorithm picked it up, started pushing this tweet onto everybody's timelines, including mine. I saw it and I was like, you know, I think I would trust somebody who runs a 90s anime fan account. So I went to Libby, I looked for it, I put in my code. There was like 300 people waiting in line. I was like, oh my god, 300 people. Wait long lah, just wait, okay, just wait. And then in the meantime, I just like saw this book get bigger and bigger online. People were actually like enjoying it after they had seen that viral tweet. There was some kind of cosplay festival going on in America, and people were like dressing up as the character Wolfwood and carrying around like physical copies of the book or like giant cardboard mock-ups of the book itself. Popularity for this book was surging. It was like hitting the bestsellers list everywhere. I think because of that, Libby like sort of noted the surge in popularity for this book, and it purchased another 24 e-copies. Because of that, the line started moving a lot faster. I got my copy way earlier than I expected. Afterwards, I understood like why this book was so hyped up, because it was actually a very good read. I went in just not knowing what's going on. I avoided any and all reviews because that's what the original tweet said to do, said to not look it up, just go and read it. So I decided to go in blind as suggested. I felt like that was the right decision to do. So if you don't want to hear about it, then you just don't watch anymore, okay? You just don't watch already. This is How You Lose the Time War. It's about two time-traveling agents. It's set all across time. When these agents travel back in time, they call it up thread because they're going up what they are called the braid. The premise is that time is a braid, and a braid is made up of different strands, kind of like hair, right? You have different strands and then you braid it up, and then that one braid is like time. These time-traveling agents, they can sort of go up, which is go back into time towards the past, or they can go down, which is towards the future. Each individual strand is one possibility. There are thousands and thousands of strands because one small event can cause the creation of a different universe. For example, across the different strands, there are some similarities, such as the existence of a character like Socrates, the existence of Genghis Khan. So the two agents are called Red and Blue. Red comes from a future where everything has been taken over by technology. For example, people worship this god called Hack, like hacker, basically like a technotopia. They have sort of like reached post-singularity. The big computer can read everyone's minds and everyone is kind of like living in the interweb or something like that. It's up to your imagination how you want to envision it, but that's how I envisioned it. I envisioned it a little bit close to a Ghost in the Shell. On the other hand, Agent Blue, she is from a future where everyone lives in a hive mind that connects all organic beings. People and plant matter and animal matter, they are not even separate anymore. Everyone is like one big living consciousness. These two futures are run by their governments. So the government for red side is called the agency, the government for blue side is called like garden. They are responsible for pushing the future towards their universe. They are mutually exclusive. So you cannot have both garden and also agency existing at the same time because fundamentally they are very different. But both right now exist as a possibility in a kind of like Schrodinger's cat way. They will send their agents back in time to try to manipulate events, manipulate people in order to strengthen the possibility of their future existing instead of the other future existing. Does that make sense? Red and blue are like the top agents. They are very good at what they do, which is why they started to take note of each other. They start to notice each other's handiwork when they do intersect a long time. Since I have to like think very hard about what prepositions to use. Time traveling is not a very like simple concept. You want your binky? Binky? So they start writing letters to each other. What starts out as boastful taunts became like something deeper the more they wrote to each other. This clearly puts the both of them in a lot of danger. From the perspective of their respective futures, the other person is the enemy. But then what they find out is that actually their fates have been intertwined from the very start, inextricably. One cannot exist without the other having done something to intervene. The metaphor used to describe the relationship they have with each other across time and a long time is that of the Mobius strip, where you do not know where is the start or where is the end. It just seems to be one like seamless ribbon. The story then ends on a hopeful note in which they decide to strive for a third future, one where they can both exist at the same time. So they are going to go back in time and work together now to produce this third option for themselves. It's actually a really good story. I felt very stressed reading it because I kept thinking like one of them was going to die, but like thankfully like no one has to die. Okay, 2 more books. At Least You Have Your Health by Madi Sinha. The protagonist of this book is an Indian American woman, has 3 kids. She married a white guy and she's working as a gynecologist. She's having a hard time at work because they are understaffed and people don't really respect gynecology as much as they should. She's also currently the sole breadwinner of the family. At the same time, she's also the main caregiver because honestly, like, I know her husband tries his best, but it seems like he's still not picking up the slack as much as he should. For example, he's reluctant to change diapers that have poop in it, and I'm just like, you have 3 children and you don't want to change a poopy diaper. What's wrong with you? I'm not the biggest fan of her husband. I honestly think he's like one of the villains of this book, but you know what? That's not how this book goes. So after a series of unfortunate events, our protagonist, Maya, she ends up having to quit her job at the hospital, and then she gets hired by one of the mothers that she meets when she goes for parents meeting at the fancy school that she wants to send her daughter to. Her employer is this woman who runs a boutique medical services business. She only caters to rich clients. There is a subscription fee. It's giving like goop, honestly, because the part of the subscription services is that you can hire like people to come and help you align your inner chakra, and the website has like crystals that help you rebalance wherever you touch them to. Some of the women, they obviously put the crystals up their vaginas and it gets stuck there. They need Maya's help to take it out because these women, even though they are grown women, they are basically like very ignorant about their own bodies and about like women's health. They just buy into all these like new age nonsense where they reject science, they reject vaccines, they just believe in nature healing. One of the characters in this book, she doesn't even believe that childbirth is going to hurt. Like, she's pregnant and she thinks that because childbirth is natural, there's not going to be any pain. It only hurts if you do unnatural things like give birth in a hospital with medical assistance. She wants to give birth in the ocean. You know how dirty the ocean is? She doesn't even want like a proper doctor or like an official midwife. She's going to hire some random Instagram lady to help her deliver her baby. These are like the rich and privileged but also extremely ignorant. Maya, throughout the book, she is trying to figure out what she should do because on one hand, these are the people that are paying her salary, right? It doesn't matter if she is enabling them to do all these like stupid nonsense because they are also giving her like a very big and fat paycheck, which she wants because she's also very eager to upgrade her station in life. She wants to give her children the best schools, the best food, the best of everything. Cannot help but compare herself with other mothers, their lifestyles with the lifestyles of the super rich parents whose kids attend the school. But then like there comes a breaking point where she realizes that she cannot just stand by and do nothing anymore. She needs to intervene, if not lives are gonna be lost. At the end of the day, she's still a doctor. So it does like talk about a lot of things. It talks about racism, it talks about the horrible state of public schooling, misogyny, sexism, even within the medical industry, social inequality. And on top of that, it is an entertaining story. I would recommend this book. Okay, last book. Just in time for Pride Month. A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. So I didn't know, but this writer apparently, his books are all LGBTQ. This is not the only Regency romance novel that he has written, but it is, I think, the only one so far that has a transgender character. The couple in question used to be best friends. They went to the same school, they would spend summers together, they even went to enlist in the war together. But then during the war, something went wrong. The main character, she ends up being injured and taken care of by some good Samaritans, and that's when she realizes that now that she's presumed dead, she can live the life that she always wanted to, live life as a woman, even though there is always this like undercurrent of sadness that she did not get to have the childhood that she always wanted. She's actually considered too old to debut or to like get a good match already, because the so-called expiry date for men and women are very different, right? So because she's already way past the age of marriage, which is like 17, 18, 19, 20, she's basically now like a spinster aunt. On the surface, she is a lady's companion to her sister-in-law. The man who used to be her best friend, he thinks that he is responsible for her death. Because of the war, he got shot in the leg, so he also became like disabled. And this is like a huge hit on his self-esteem because he feels like he's so ugly and disfigured, no woman would ever want him. And then on top of that, he was like depressed and alcoholic and addicted to painkillers because he felt responsible. He was spiraling, he was like suicidal in fact. So these characters, I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but they meet, and at first the guy doesn't even recognize his best friend because this is a beautiful woman in front of him, and he falls for this beautiful woman in front of him. And later on, he realizes that, oh my god, this is the guy that I grew up with. Obviously, she's not a guy anymore. And then they each have to individually fight their own inner demons in order to become a couple for real. That is the plot summary of A Lady for a Duke. It does follow the tropes of the Regency romance novel quite well. It's entertaining. It's R21. I was surprised. I was like, oh, I didn't expect it to be so R21, but it was really R21. It's also like a bit of like a slow burn, so it's like best friends to lovers, slow burn. I wish there were more Regency romance novels starring like LGBTQ characters, because I feel like it changes the game. When you read other romance novels, say Bridgerton series or even like the Worthington series, the conflict usually is very predictable. Daddy issues, money issues, oppressive patriarchy issues. But then when you have LGBTQ characters, you bring in like more issues. That's the end of this month's booktube. My cat managed to sleep throughout the entire thing. My baby is not asleep at all. This is the baby life now. Hello, baby. You want me to change your diaper? Is that what you want? So that's all for today. Thanks for listening. I'll see you maybe at the end of the month. Bye bye.